Welcome back everybody to part 4 where we build this mobile tool cart. Have you had enough or are you thirsty for more? If you haven't watched the other parts, you'll find links down in the descriptions to part 1 through 3. This is the 4th part and final part of this tool cart video. And it's done. So I'm going to walk you through the last steps I took here. And stay tuned till the end, because at the end I'm going to show you all the custom features this thing has that may not be obvious when you watch the build video. All right, let's get to it.
We're going to start this by building the drawer boxes, and so we need to build the carcasses and the drawer fronts. And you can see our computer mock-up we have. This is what the parts are going to look like, and here are the rough dimensions. So our first step is to cut down the plywood. So we're cutting these down to 4-inch strips for the sides, front, and back, and then 5-inch strips that are going to be the faces. And then we cut the pieces down to length on the miter saw. I recommend you cut the front and back slightly larger than you need, because you're going to cut these down to final dimensions depending on the width of your drawer slides. We need to cut some slots in the sides and back and front of the drawer box pieces to accommodate the plywood that's going to make up the bottom. So to do this, I'm going to go ahead and raise the blade, and then I'm going to come in basically about, 3/16 of an inch from the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and start cutting my slots. And so I'm going to basically run all the pieces through the saw, and then I'm going to move the blade over and keep cutting until I get it thick enough for the plywood to set into. Next, I'm going to go ahead and install the drawer slides, and I'm using a 3/8 inch space here to basically get the hinges off the bottom. So I'm going to install this first side under the planer, and then I'll move over and install the side underneath the table saw. I'm not going to install that top drawer yet because it needs to be based off the bottom drawer, so we'll wait till that bottom drawer is in. With the drawer slides in, I can go ahead and put the sides in, and then I can measure the distance between those two sides, and that's going to give me my exact measurement for the front piece and the back piece. And I'll repeat that on the other side. Next, we need to drill some pocket holes in the front pieces and the back pieces, so they're going to screw through into the sides, and it's what's going to hold the drawer boxes together, that and glue. Next, I'm going to go ahead and start to assemble the drawer boxes. So I'm going to put glue on the ends of the front and back pieces, and then I'm going to clamp those in place and use a square to hold it in place while I go ahead and drive the pocket hole screws in. Next, I'm going to move on to assembling the other boxes, and I've moved over to my other bigger bench so I have more area, and it works exactly the same way. So I'm going to use clamps and screws. I'm going to pin nail it to hold everything in place, and then drive those pocket hole screws in. The pin nails really help to prevent the alignment from shifting when you're driving the pocket hole screws in. Next, I'm going to go ahead and glue up and basically put the bottoms in. And I've measured these and then cut the panels 1/4 inch plywood to length, and then same thing, we'll just go ahead and finish putting the box carcasses together. With the drawer boxes all built, I can go ahead and move on to installing them. So I'm going to use some 1/4 inch spacers on the bottom, and that's just really to lift the drawer so it's not dragging along the bottom part of the plywood. And with that, I can install the drawer slides. So I'll do that on both sides. And then I can measure the openings for the drawer faces. And then I'm going to subtract about 1/8 inch all the way around. And this gives me enough space so that the drawer doesn't rub on anything. And so what I'm doing is I'm putting a shim here in the bottom. And I realized I need to use a thinner shim, so I'm actually just going to use a couple washers. And that's just enough to bring the base up, or bring the drawer face up so it's not rubbing along the bottom. And then I can pin nail it in from the front and then actually screw it in from the back to hold it permanently. And then I'm going to repeat this process for the other drawer. Next, I'm going to put a couple spacers on the top of the bottom drawer, and this is so I can place my next set of drawer slides and get those in roughly the same position. So I'm going to do that on both sides, and then I'm going to go ahead and install the drawer box like I did before, and then finally install the drawer face. And with that, the drawers are done, except for installing the drawer pulls. Next, we're going to move on to routing the 3/4 inch Dados in the top of the melamine to accept the T-track that we're going to put in here. So to do that, I've clamped down some guides that are going to use to basically align the router, and then I'm going through with a 3/4 inch bit and going down, 1/8 to 1/4 inch at a time, and I'm slowly cutting out those slots.
So I was moving along, cutting these dados for the T-track to go into, and all of a sudden I saw a big spark and a big crunching noise, and work came to a halt. So when you're routing out these T-track dados, it's important to make sure that there's no screws coming in from underneath where you secured the top. So I ran the router bit right in, basically sideswiped a screw. If I was off by, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch, I would have been in the clear. But I clipped a screw just enough, and I'll show you this. So you can see here, I clipped that screw. There's a little screw right there that came in from the bottom, one of those wood screws, and I clipped it with the router. I didn't even see it because it was drilled in from underneath. And it was enough that it shattered the carbide off the end of the bit, which means at that point, game over, I can't go do anymore. So, work came to a halt last night, and then I had to run to Menards and buy another 3/4 inch bit. Actually, I bought 2 of them, so I have a backup bit, so if this ever happens again, I'm not dead in the water. Now let's get back to it.
So with a fresh bit in the router and me checking to make sure there's no possibility of any other screws that I could hit, I went through and finished cutting all the dados. Next I moved on to installing the T-track. And for doing this, I basically pressed the T-track in place after it was cut to length. And then I just basically used a VIX bit to center drill all of these, and then used 1-inch screws to drill through the melamine into the plywood base to hold it in place. And then I repeated that with the other T-tracks. Okay, next I installed the drawer pulls, and to do that I created this alignment block, and this is going to allow me to get the placement of those handles exactly in the middle, both horizontally and vertically. And to do that I clamp it in place, and then I drill through the alignment block, and then finish the screws, and then I had to go and buy longer screws because I needed 2-inch screws because the screws that come with the handles weren't long enough. And I'm going through 2 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood here, so I needed 2-inch screws to get through that and into the handle. And with that in place, I basically screwed those in from the backside, and the drawers are done. Then I moved on to giving everything a good thorough sanding. Melamine can be very sharp on the edges, so I recommend you take a sander and run it around and round over all those edges. That'll, 1, keep you from getting cut by the edges of the melamine, and 2, it will prevent that melamine from catching on something and chipping. One of the things that's too large with my design is the planer handle. There just isn't enough room for that planer handle to go in there and sit comfortably. So what I did is I found a smaller handle that someone had already designed and downloaded it from Thingiverse, 3D printed it. And with that I was able to install that, and now I can reach in here and use that handle if I want to. I can also just grab the wheel and turn it by the wheel, but it's quicker to actually spin it with the handle. Okay, and with everything put together, let's walk through the various features, some that are obvious, some that are not, but you might think it's pretty interesting, and maybe you can incorporate some of this into your own design. So the majority of the dimensions in this cabinet were dictated by the table saw. And as you can see, the table saw is narrow enough that it doesn't interfere with the slide mechanism, and all the features on the saw work like normal. The drawer down here holds all my accessories, so here I've got my Incra micro gauge in here and some clamps. On this side, the planer infeed table folds out of the way so I don't slam my shin on it. And then I've got another drawer here for storage. We have our side folding table that pretty much doubles our work surface. And then we have a back folding table for outfeed support. The slot in our outfeed table extends our miter bar so it doesn't hit it when we actually use any of our accessories. The top work surface gives us lots of clamping options. Here I'm using some 3D printed clamps that I've made, and I can use the tracks to clamp something down in pretty much any position, which is great. Alternately, those 4 or 5 holes along the side give us another clamping option. So I could stick clamps through those 5 holes and use that to clamp stuff in place. So in this case, I'm just using some squeeze clamps, but if I had long-range clamps, like those Craig long-range clamps, I could stick them through the holes, and I'm clamping surface to surface. So I'm not clamping on just the edge, I'm clamping along the bottom of that surface. Alternately, I could actually clamp here on the sides, and look at this neat trick. Here I'm going to clamp this board in place, and then once it's clamped in place, I can then lower that table down, and now I've got a vertical holder, and then I can come in here and plane the edge of a piece of wood or do something like that. Another trick with that side folding table and clamping is I can use it to hold 2 pieces in kind of a 90-degree alignment. So in this case, I'm clamping one piece in place, Like if I was doing those drawer bottoms, I could have used this. And then I can clamp that top piece down, and then I can use it to hold it in place where I can drill through or attach the two pieces, like if I was doing a butt joint or something of that nature. I'm also going to use that dead space under this to hold my saw blades. So here I've just drilled a screw in, and it's holding my saw blades, but I can mount other accessories there as well. On the other end, I painted this side black and then installed some French cleats. And here I have it holding my gripper push block, but I can put other accessories here and move them around when I need to. On the back side, you have the outfeed support for the planer. This table doesn't fold, and that's just how the Dewalt was designed, unless you remove the dust port. On my table saw, if I remove my little dust port adapter, then I can actually fold this table completely down, and that kind of gives me the maximum amount of flat storage there to push it up against a wall. On this side, like we've seen before, I can fold this table down, and then we have pretty much the smallest dimension this cart's going to be, which is still pretty compact. And with that, the cart's complete. Check the description below, and there'll be a link to the plan so you can build your own. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you found this interesting. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. That way you can get notifications when I have more videos available. Click that little bell button. If you've got a comment about this, leave me a comment or questions. I usually respond to just about everything. All right, thanks everybody. See you next time. Get out in the garage and build something. Bye.